Welcome back. Our 2025 Camp View Northern Tour continues here on the Cactus Atlas. In our last episode, we visited the Lehman Caves and marveled at the fabulous formations. But it's time to move on as we get closer and closer to home, which means leaving a newfound favorite. This one's going to be a little difficult for me to leave, in that I'm pretty sure I've declared that this is my favorite campsite of the entire 3-week trip, the number one, and we have one more to go. In case you're just hopping on board here, I explain in more detail and show the campsite off in some previous videos, so make sure to go back and catch up if you didn't see those, but everything's packed up in the truck, ready to go, other than just me. Oh, and you too. It is just a few minutes after sunrise here too. I got started even earlier than usual today. Still think I'm on mountain time, which is causing me to get up like an hour earlier than usual. I think I started packing up at 5:30 a.m. so I'm assuming it's still the 6 o'clock hour at this point, so we're way ahead of schedule. I realized something kind of cool too. Kind of started counting down on, I think, on a couple episodes back, but that should have been the second to last time that I have to break down my camp on this trip. So I've been doing this for 3 weeks now. Oftentimes spending one night in a location, setting up tent, sleeping, waking up in the morning, breaking it down, setting up again when I arrive at my next location. Just made that remark to myself that second to last time. Mixed emotions about it too. It's kind of sad because I've been enjoying this lifestyle. Now, of course, it would be wrong of me not to go to my favorite little spot here, especially for those that might just be jumping on board and haven't seen previous episodes. But there's this creek back here, Lehman Creek, here at Upper Lehman Campground at Great Basin National Park. And we spent some time out back here yesterday drinking coffee, sitting on my fold-out chair, enjoying this beautiful creek, which I'm told is a habitat for Bonneville trout. I've come back here so many times on this, the last couple days I lost track, but how could you not? I mean, it's like something out of a fairy tale book to me. It's almost like a very gradual waterfall, if you think about it. All right. It's hard to pull myself away, but I don't have a reservation for tonight here. We have a reservation elsewhere at a place I've been to before but never camped on this channel. Years ago at this point, probably 2-3 years ago. Cathedral Gorge State Park, one of the most weird alien landscapes that I have seen. Known for these like, almost like slot canyon-like features that made of like a, I think bentonite clay if I remember correctly. This really resilient, strong material. It's almost like turns into concrete, but you're just gonna have to wait and see it for yourself. And 3 weeks on the road for poor Slim. He's a dirty guy. He's covered in bug splatters. He's gonna get a good shower when we go home, but he's driven thousands of miles. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm very grateful to have this truck. My favorite vehicle of my life, to be honest with you. It's my first real bromance, as they say.
Love you too, buddy.
All right, as usual, we're gonna be changing locations. If you've been following along, you're probably a pro by now too. And I've got stops plotted along the way, one of which isn't too far out of the national park that we're gonna check out. And some Old West history today, and then strange geology. How can you go wrong with that? Actually, the first thing's gonna be some indigenous people history going pretty far back to the Fremont culture, right outside the gates of the park, if you can believe that. So history, geology. Alrighty, is everybody ready? Let's do this. Another day on the Camp View 2025 Northern Tour on the Cactus Atlas. I started adding on the Cactus Atlas at the end of that because I don't want people to be confused thinking that I intended to release this on Camp View, my other YouTube channel, where we film campgrounds. I drive through them. Think of Google Street View, but for campsites. And unlike Google Street View, rather than having like still images, we do video pass-bys. So that way, if you're planning a trip, man, it's bright out here, it's hard to see. But if you're planning a trip and you're gonna book a reservation, especially on a reservation system like recreation.gov, you may already know how difficult it can be to discern details about a site using the photos they give you. So the idea behind Camp View is to help with that, basically, that problem. And it's an app at campview.com where you can not only see the footage, you could watch it on YouTube, you could watch it in the app at campview.com, and you can write reviews, read reviews of campsites, and save preferences for campsites at this point, and many more features to come. So sorry I gotta plug it every once in a while, but that's mainly the main point of my trip, was to do that and make Cactus Atlas videos all along the way to document the journey, which is why we're here today. All right, this isn't gonna be very fun for the moment. We're heading eastward. The sun has risen. So we're going to not film because it's too bright as we exit the park, unless we start heading not eastward for a temporary time. But I think our first destination outside of the gates is gonna have us heading eastward briefly too. So I will see you somewhere shortly down the road. Decided to make an impromptu stop since we're doing well on time. There's this little spot here. I don't know what the signs are all about. I'm gonna read them in a minute, but what I really wanted to do is take a minute to reflect on Great Basin National Park from down below, looking back up. Because if you remember the last couple episodes, we were way up there, like at 10,000 feet, looking down at this scene. And I was telling you, you know, there's this ocean of sagebrush, like this really dry, deserty sagebrush, Great Basin environment. And now we're actually in the ocean. It's like we've left the island. Maybe I'm waiting at this point. We're not full on in the ocean. But over here, I'm assuming that's Wheeler Peak up there. We were just up there just a few minutes ago. Like, it took a couple minutes to get down here, but Upper Lehman Campground is probably like a quarter of the way up, halfway up, I don't know. Something like that. And that creek is somewhere in there. But from a distance, you do see the greenery. If we get further and further back, it's harder to discern the details. But one could be forgiven maybe for looking at this and not realizing there are really dense, lush pine forests up there, aspen trees, you know, which when you're down here, you're like, huh? Like, for example, look, I don't know what mountains those are. I haven't studied the maps and terrain around here, but I don't see any detail this far out. And we're not that far from that, really, but there's probably trees up on those too. And this is where that term Sky Island comes from, in that, you know, you have these different biological regions with different vegetation, animals, all of it, in these isolated pockets like that, these mountain regions that rise out of deserts in the Southwest. We got a lot of that in Arizona. I'm using the term Sky Island. I haven't seen it used here at Great Basin, but I assume it qualifies. And the moon is like right above the peak. I don't know how well that's coming out on video, but it's a really cool sight in person. It's pretty large right now, but probably on video, it's probably just a little white dot. But on today's adventure, we're going to be heavily in sagebrush country, the Great Basin country, not high up in mountains. And I'm even wearing shorts and a t-shirt already. It's the first time in like well over a week, maybe 2 weeks, that I didn't wake up to numb fingers, temperatures in the 30s. So it's a sign that I'm getting closer and closer to my hometown of Phoenix. And based on what my wife has been telling me, I don't know if I want to go back. I think they hit 118 a couple days ago or something like that. I've had it. I think I've had it with that. I really have. But all of these little mountains are a beautiful sight in the early morning light. I'm also thinking, because I think I see the building maybe, like kind of down below this region, I want to say is where the cave tour is. So there's a cave that we explored yesterday on a tour, Lehman Cave. It was really spectacular. And so if you missed last week's episode, you missed a lot. So you might want to catch up and see that. But it's kind of cool to see it from a distance because now I know there's a cave in there. So very neat. Our destination is going to be somewhere out there in the vast ocean of sagebrush and heat. Are you guys ready? Well, we gotta go. All right, I'm in Baker, Nevada, which is the town right outside the entrance of Great Basin National Park. Sorry, it's early. My brain's still waking up. Kind of a cool town. Small town. Not much here at all, but I do have a gas station, so I decided to top off the tank. Probably didn't need to, but out in the remote parts, I feel more secure knowing I can go far if I need to. But, in fact, let me plot a route to somewhere. Baker Archaeological Site. I can't talk. Hey, I figured it out.
Continue on Nevada 487 for 1.5 miles.
Baker
Archaeological Site may not be open yet when you arrive.
What? I don't believe that. It's only 4 minutes away. We're gonna try. There's a place called Baker Archaeological Site, and see, I said it now. I said it right. And I don't think there's much to see there at all. We might just see sagebrush. Maybe a interpretive sign or something like that. We'll find out, but it's so close, I want to check it out. It's one of the cultures, the indigenous cultures of old, pre-Columbian. I think the site dates back to 1000 to 1200 AD. So strikingly weird to go from being up there to being down here, just like in a snap of a finger. Messes with your mind a little bit. I think I see our location. It just looks like a pavilion and a vault toilet. So I don't know why it would have hours, like 8 a.m., but that's odd for this type of a stop. But I have lots of questions. I read enough to be intrigued about this, but I also have some confusion about this situation down here.
Continue on North Fence Road for 1/2 mile.
Now we got dirt road or gravel road here. You could still see Great Basin National Park clear as day, the big mountain right back there. I'm burning, and I got washboards like wiggling my insides. Make it stop. So before we get into this, let's take one more look over towards Great Basin National Park, seen from even further away. Now we're way out into the ocean, and I'm on my ship, the SS Slim, cruising through a sea of sagebrush off of my little island sanctuary up there. The breeze is actually cooler down here than it was up there. I wonder if it's all the cold air blowing off the mountains and settling down here or something. Really neat sight. But anyway, here's our first stop. It's a BLM site the Baker Archaeological Site. And you're probably going to remark, just like I read, that, hey, Glenn, there's really nothing here. Well, that's not exactly true. There is something here, but yes, it may not be completely visible to our eyes. So my Wikipedia level knowledge is basically, and we're going to confirm it when I go up here, is that this was a former settlement of the Fremont culture. And the Fremont culture, we've actually seen some of their handiwork, mainly in the form of pictographs in various locations in Utah. These were contemporaries of cultures like the Hohokam in my state, contemporaries of what archaeologists refer to as the Anasazi, or probably better said, the ancestral Puebloan people, those that made Chaco Canyon, for example, and other various cultures of that time like the Salado. So there's all these cultures were kind of thriving at the same time, and you see a lot of similarities between them all. So to me, it's a fascinating thing to study, but we oftentimes say these cultures kind of disappeared, not the people. And I think it's a complicated thing because there's probably some things that carried forward, but like, you know, peoples like the Hopi and the Zuni are thought to be the likely descendants of people like the ancestral Puebloans, and I'm sure these cultures blended together. But anyway, that's really the people we're talking about. Just think of them as people, you know, contemporaries of the people that built Chaco Canyon, if you want to think of it that way and simplify it. This is perfect, actually, because you can see, I didn't know they were really associated with Nevada, but this shows their area of influence. Pretty much what we call Utah today, a big chunk of that. But you could actually see a little bit goes into Nevada right where we're at. So we're on the outer fringes of where these people would have lived. But I was correct, the Fremont culture. Actually, look at that. I'm so good, aren't I? Contemporaries of the Anasazi and builders of Mesa Verde, or the Anasazi were the builders of Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. So hopefully you can trust me here. I think I kind of know what I'm talking about, but I'm not no college professor. Here's an artist rendition of what they may have looked like and the residents here that they excavated, this community that we're gonna go walk and ponder. You know, so when you start looking and studying these cultures like the Hohokam, the Perry Mesa culture, the Anasazi, all of these cultures, I see a lot of similarities, like in some of the architecture. I mean, the pottery, each culture had its own unique design in pottery, but you know, you take a step back and, you know, these people weren't like so isolated that they probably knew of each other. They probably traded with each other, I imagine. It wasn't like, you know, like that. They probably influenced each other. It just would be hard for me to believe not. But the Fremonts are, you know, I'll give you a couple examples we'll put up on the screen of what we've seen of them. When I think of the Fremont culture, I think of like Sego, Utah. I think of the San Rafael Swell. And these people, I think, win the prize for me. Like it's just, you know, in the San Rafael Swell, the Buckhorn Wash pictograph panel, I believe it is one. And then we saw one near the historic town of, I want to say, I used to pronounce it Sego, but I think it's Sego. I know I always forget, and I know it's named after a state flower, I think. So forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but you know, you're seeing pictures on screen now of all of that stuff. So that was these people. So, okay, Glenn, there's a big settlement out here. I don't see anything though. There's nothing here at all, and that's true. Not on the surface. This is a fairly recent excavation, the early 1990s. And I don't know what each location is. There are markings. There's probably some kind of pamphlet. I didn't see any up there, but some kind of guided tour that would tell you what they found. But what they do typically in these excavations is they would remove artifacts. Some of them are on display in various museums, is my understanding. I forget the one museum where it is, but so you could go find some of the stuff they dug up here. But the actual structures and foundations and stuff, they're here, but they're buried, because typically what they do after they're done excavating is they cover it back up with dirt after they dig out what they want to basically preserve it. So there is a village here that we're walking through, but it's gonna be under the dirt and we can't see it. And I think we're gonna see some, from what I read, something over here, but I believe those are like recently man-made. They're not like original, but maybe they're depictions of something. Not really sure what, but we'll find out. So the other thing I read is what they were doing out here. It was these people, all of the cultures that we're talking about. Some of you would say they were, these cultures were cannibals and slave traders and all that. I think there is evidence of some things on a small scale, but not large scale cannibalism and things, because we have access to these people's poop and can study what they ate. They're called coprolites. And I guarantee you there's more coprolites on the record that show that they ate corn and probably beans and squashes and things like that, not humans. Although there probably was ritualistic cannibalism that happened. There was slavery in cultures of out here in this region, but for the most part, I picture them being very peaceful, groups that settled down their roots. Probably the beginning of actual more sophisticated civilizations, actually. And Chaco Canyon's probably the prime example of that. But these people were out here farming, harvesting crops and making a living out here on this plain. I'm wondering, though, I know the climate's changed, and I think these people lived in a wetter time and things dried out and there were droughts that forced them to disperse, basically, is one of the theories of where all these cultures disappeared to. But basically, it's kind of curious, though. I don't know if this was a sagebrush desert in their time. I don't know enough about it to say if it was or wasn't. But it seems like a weird location to build a village, is kind of what I was saying when I was pulling up my questions. Why would they want to bake in the sun out here? My only hypothesis would be that it is, maybe it's good for farming. Maybe it's good soil. I don't know. And I'm sure, if they're living out here, they're probably spending a lot of time up there getting wood, just like the Chacoans did. They would cut down like juniper trees and pines and haul them to the site where Chaco is, where there really were not any forests, is my understanding. So probably something similar here. And it's really not far away, actually. Probably just a few miles at this point. So I'm sure those people explored that. I know that indigenous people knew about the caves. I did ask about that in Lehman Cave. Is there any evidence of, indigenous cultures being in there? And they did find a burial in the cave, but I don't think they went deep in to the cave, and there were no pictographs or petroglyphs, according to the tour guide, inside of the cave. Lehman in the 1880s is really the one responsible for going deeper into the cave and starting an age of tourism inside of there. But anyway, I find it haunting to be walking on the same grounds that these cultures thrived on. But I find it fascinating. I love this stuff. Without like any kind of material to help supplement what these things are, I'm guessing these are depictions of foundations of some of the structures they found. Whatever I read said that there's a combination of granaries here. These people were masters of harvesting things like corn and putting them in granaries and then stocking up, so they could really have a pretty long outlook for stocking up on food. So you see a lot of that. A lot of things that you might mistake for residences were actually probably granaries where they would store things like corn, I assume. And then certainly residences like, Pueblo. I don't know what these are really called. Sometimes I see them referred to different names, but Pueblo-like structures, I imagine, like probably, maybe this is a depiction of one. I imagine like 4 walls, no doors on the outside, ladders going up, and entryway through the roof is really kind of a common thing that you see with these cultures. So, and then if you lived out here, though, like that would be your view, which would not be too shabby. So I could be, wrong. I don't know if anybody knows if these are actual excavated foundations, let me know, but I don't think they are. Be kind of curious too, is if it's made of dirt, and even in our time, after a few years and a few heavy rains, I could see that getting knocked down, but maybe it marks the location of something that was excavated, is my best guess at the very least. But I really don't know. I didn't have time to do extensive research, just enough Wikipediaing type things to tell you what I just read. You basically had a farming culture out here, living in a village, having a pretty successful existence during their time, probably for a couple hundred years, probably several generations lived out here, all in the shadow of what we now call Great Basin National Park and Wheeler Peak. I would call myself maybe an armchair historian or archaeologist, and that might even be giving me too much credit. I spend a lot of time, if you watch the Cactus Atlas, we've been to so many sites now, so many museums. I've read, I can't keep track of how many interpretive signs I've read. So my knowledge really comes from that. A few books I choose, like collegiate level books when I can find good ones that are very secular, based in modern archaeology and science. That's what I choose. I know there are really interesting legends that try to explain some from the native people. I respect them very much. I love legends. I love hearing the stories. To some of them, they're probably more than legends in their beliefs. So I always try to be careful, because every once in a while you really can upset somebody pretty badly when you try to give a more scientific point of view of this stuff and say things like, I don't see evidence, actual measurable objective evidence that cultures like this were practicing, massive slave trading on epic scales and practicing cannibalism. Instead, what I see when I dig deeper, I read about coprolite studies, and I just see sweeping evidence that shows that they were eating corn and squash and probably small game and stuff like that. And then you have, I forget the site in northwestern Utah, probably not far from, is it Farmington? Yes, they did find sites where there's evidence of cannibalism, but to me, they're very isolated things. And cannibalism, ritualistic cannibalism, is something known around the world. Maybe it was something done, maybe they killed their enemies or something in a fight and did some ritual and ate them. Or maybe even, I think there are cultures where maybe, a relative died or something, and they, out of honor, ate them or something weird like that. I don't know. So I know those things did happen. There is evidence, but then it gets twisted. And then the ancient aliens crap starts and all of this, and all the kivas are now where they would hold the people like that they were going to eat in the kivas, which doesn't make sense, because kivas are shallow, easy to get out of, with many doors all around them. If you're going to contain people, why would you build structures like that? When you start to really break it down logically, it doesn't make sense to me. So I don't subscribe to it at all. So believe what you want to believe. I'm cool with that. That's why we live in America. All right, we're going to just kind of walk through. When I just stay still, it's just so ghostly and quiet out here. And just like this village that once was right here under our feet. Oh man, I just walked right by this like an idiot. But they do have a trail guide. Supposed to return it to the box, but this tells you a lot. I didn't have time actually to go through all of this. This is a very robust publication actually. My goodness, that's a lot for this kind of thing. This is wonderful. Here we go. Baker villages that appeared during excavation. Saw something interesting here, I think. There we go. There's like an artist depiction of what this may have looked like around AD 1275. So you can see it's just like a village, agriculture. And they found lots of artifacts out here, pottery, clay figurines, things like that. So some of which I believe, like I said, have been moved to museums, but had I found that to begin with anyway, I don't think I'd have time to really give you the good tour today, because we do have an itinerary, I can't talk this morning, that I must follow. So let's head back to the vehicle and head on down the road. All right, let's take our last look here at the Baker Archaeological Site, this village out here. And we'll kind of pull out and head on out. But yeah, kind of a curious location still to me. But if they were making a living out here for a couple hundred years successfully, that would make sense, you know. But being as though I've got a full signal out here, I plotted my route to our next location, the next major location on our journey, another historic site. This time, a site of the Old West. An old silver mining town named Pioche, named after a Frenchman that I believe bought the town in the 1800s. So we're gonna head out there and you're gonna get another Wikipedia level whirlwind tour of that town. I've never explored it before, but I'm very excited to see it. And then from there, I don't think we're that terribly far from our final destination of Cathedral Gorge State Park. Between the washboards and the loud noise in here, Google Maps talking and me talking, it's a little bit much for myself. You know, I was realizing my coffee stops have really fallen apart here at the end in Nevada, just because there are no options. I think there was a little general store I saw at the very last minute right there in Baker. I saw people sitting, I think it was an inn though, and I'm not sure like if it's, I just was like, we got things to do. There are people sitting on the front porch drinking coffees, and there were those really small cups that you get like complimentary at hotels and stuff. I don't play that. I need at least 16 ounces. And 16 ounces is not my preference. 20 ounces is more like it. So
in 1,000 feet,
I don't mess with that piddly stuff. So I skipped that. Pioche is probably realistically the next place where I can get coffee. But the good news is that our arrival time is due to be at 9:34 a.m. So it's still coffee time in my mind at 9:30 in the morning. So maybe we'll find a cup when we get to Pioche. Or if I pass a gas station in between here and there, we'll do some more gas station cappuccino or coffee. But I don't think the prospects are very good out in these regions. So Nevada is one of the most beautiful states to me. I love the Great Basin. I love the endless seas of sagebrush and mountains. But one thing Nevada is not is a place for coffee aficionados. You're not gonna, if you do find something, you're lucky. But I don't mean that as a complaint. I actually probably mean it more as a compliment, because I like isolation and emptiness. I seek it out. So we're gonna be retracing some of our steps from when we drove out here. I don't think I filmed a lot though coming out here, but we're essentially going to be taking 50 west. We're on I'm trying to think ahead. I studied maps. I think it's 93 in Nevada that runs north and south, and that will run through Pioche. So we will be doing that. It's a simple route actually. It's kind of nice. There's not many routes that I have to worry about. It's enough where I know the route in my head. I don't even really need Google Maps, but just in case, we'll leave it on. It kind of helps me know how much longer I have to go, how many miles are left, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not gonna do a lot of commentary, I think, here on this part of the drive. I'll probably start talking more as we get closer to Pioche. But I will try to capture some scenes from the road for you so we can enjoy, since we're kind of on our prairie schooner, our The SS Slim, sailing through a sea of sagebrush. The day continues next time when we reach Pioche, take a walk around, and get an impromptu invite into a museum before continuing on to Cathedral Gorge. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.